All right, hi everybody. My name is John Kilkenny. I'm the director of the SUNY Summer Music Festival. It's great to be here today. This is take two with my good friend Natasha Farny. We had a little bit of some sound issues on our other live recording and some video stuff, and so in this day and age, that's so important. So we wanted to have another chance to make sure that everything that we talked about really got out there to the folks that are with us. So the first thing before I say hello to Natasha is just to mention that we're really excited to roll out our new winter program. We have a digital winter festival that we're offering through SUNY, January 3rd to the 8th, 2021. We'll have orchestral program, composition, conducting, and a really outstanding new opera intensive that I'm excited about. I'm excited about all of it. You can visit our website and tune into these broadcasts and other things, all of our social media, to learn more about it. And the application will be opening in a couple weeks. So just check out our winter program and hope you all can join us. And now it's a real pleasure to introduce a great friend, wonderful cellist, professor at SUNY Fredonia, and also a longtime member of our SUNY Music Festival faculty and family, Natasha Farny. Hi, Natasha.
Hello.
So we're going to talk today about a number of things, and you've stayed awfully busy during COVID and before that. But I want to get into a little bit about some of your performance projects. I know you have a new CD that's out, and also some other recording you've done. So I'm going to mute myself here and let you talk a little bit about those projects, and then we'll share some of those recordings as well in just a sec. So, what have you been up to these days?
Oh, thanks so much for asking. My CD that came out in January, this is what it looks like. Um, it's a CD of cello and piano music by French composers. And I collected a bunch of different pieces, many of them not for cello, actually, some of them for voice and some for violin. The one that you have listed right there is a really interesting sonata that Ravel wrote when he was young. This is his first sonata. He was a student and he didn't actually ever publish it. And now, of course, Ravel lovers are eager to play anything that they can find of his. And so this has become more popular, and we cellists are very grateful to a cellist who made an arrangement for us. And so I suppose we could hear a little bit of it now if you're curious.
I have to tell you, I hate to stop music when we're talking about we're musicians talking about music, and I hate to stop that. But we'll make sure the link is in the notes about the video, and folks can go check out the YouTube channel and also purchase the recording. We'll make sure that's up there. But what was your and it's beautiful playing, by the way. It's really wonderful playing. Tell me a little bit about your I mean, besides the obvious wanting to be a musician and wanting to make a recording, what were some of the motivations behind this particular CD and some of the music you've got there?
Oh, thanks for asking about that. I suppose the main thing was that I was interested in having a challenge. And as a professor, as you know, John, a nice challenge is to try to improve your rank in the academic rank. And I received tenure years ago. And the next step for someone would be to apply for full professor. And so in order to do that, you have to have many things in order: nationally and internationally known as a player and teacher. And then also one should publish something. And so for musicians, as you know, that would be to publish a CD. And so that dream came true with a wonderful pianist, Czech pianist, Jitka Franyukova, and she actually lives in Prague, and so it was quite quite a feat that we were even able just to get together to rehearse, give some concerts, and then really put in some hard work and do the recording. We were able to do that through several interesting chance happenings. Like, for instance, Yitka was touring China as a solo pianist, and she was told by the company who hired her that they would fly her from anywhere in the world. And so she made it happen that she could fly from Buffalo, New York. So she came to work with me and we gave some concerts, and then she went off to China. And then I applied so that we could rehearse more. I applied to this wonderful institute called the Avaloq Farm Music Institute. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we worked there for a week, really hard work, lots of rehearsal, and then we put it together in a few days, and then she flew back to Prague.
Wow. Well, for folks that may not know about Avaloq Farm, it's an incredible institution. I know a couple of folks in the leadership roles there, but it's sort of a passion project for one individual who really kind of created this utopia for musicians, and there's wonderful meals and rehearsal spaces, and you could just kind of practice and perform and think and dine in this beautiful location in it's New Hampshire, right? Isn't that where it is? Yeah. So I'm jealous of a few things. And one of them is that you got to go up there and spend time working on that project. That must have been a wonderful experience for you and your colleague. Yeah. So you mentioned writing and you mentioned recording, and I actually want to step back for a second and kind of ask you to talk a little bit. And for folks that do this have varying degrees of comfort talking about themselves and talking about their early training, but kind of how you came to the cello and what brought you to that instrument. And I know this history a little bit because I know you and we're friends, but kind of your academic trajectory, because it's quite, to be perfectly honest, it's quite impressive. And I think it's also very unique in that you have experiences in both very high level performance, conservatory environments, but also high level academic environments. And so to the degree that you want to share, if you can kind of walk us through that, that would be great. And we'll get back to the musical projects in just a second.
Sure. I'm one of 5 children, and my parents are wonderful people. My dad actually, unfortunately, passed away last year, and we miss him. His anniversary of his death was last Saturday, and so he's been on our minds, all of us. He was a very athletic and enthusiastic man, very intelligent. Actually, he was also an Ivy Leaguer, studied at Princeton and got his degree at the Harvard Business School. I remember when I was in high school asking him, Dad, how did you get into all those schools? Because I felt the weight of college applications, and I was sure I wouldn't get in anywhere. And he just said something like, oh, I just talked to some people. And I thought, come on, Dad, it's not that simple, or at least it's not that simple anymore. And so he was an inspiration, both academically, but also in terms of enjoying nature and being outside and being vigorous outside. He was the one who taught me to love biking and love hiking. And I think of him every day now when I go running. And then my mother, who's still living and very active, she's a flutist. She was also a huge inspiration. In fact, when I think about all the schools I went to and all the great teachers I've had, I have to say the best teacher was my mother. I mean, she taught me many things about how to practice, how to be diligent, how to work hard, even how to teach and how to set up a studio. And so, it's interesting, John, I've been teaching at Fredonia now for 15 years. I think about the things that come out of my mouth. They're things that my parents said to me. It's really interesting. I mean, I do know.
There's a lot of research, and I didn't want to interrupt you because first of all, it's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that about. I'm sorry for your loss of your father, and thank you for sharing that story. I'm reminded of the outdoors a little bit in relation to you because when last summer or 2 summers ago, I guess the last time we were together in Sewanee, we played the Tan Dun Elegy for cello and percussion quartet. I was conducting and you were playing, and you came into rehearsal and your whole, I think it was your whole left side was like scraped up and you were kind of all banged up and I was horrified, and you said, "Oh, I'm okay. I just took a fall on my bike." I mean, you were very sort of nonchalant about it, and I was mortified for you, and also thinking to myself, "Oh my God, this piece we have to play." And of course, your performance wasn't affected by anything. You sounded amazing, but I know how much you do in Sewanee and how much you and Peter Bond and some of our other faculty are out there enjoying it. And if I have one regret about moving into the position I have, and I'm not complaining at all, but it's that I used to get to do some of that. I used to get to go hiking and do some other things, and I get to enjoy Sewanee more often now, though, than just the 4 weeks that we're there together. So I take solace in that. But anyway, not to sidetrack us, but I just remember vividly you walking into rehearsal with your whole arm, and then speaking of your parents and of your mom's influence as a teacher. I'm not an education researcher at all, but I've talked to folks that are involved in this, and there's plenty of study that shows that no matter how much training we have, we all teach. We are all most influenced by our early teachers and teach most like the people that we worked with when we were younger.
Mhm.
And I found my parents are not teachers, but I find myself, catching quotes from people that I studied with when I was young that I use fairly often, and so I think it's definitely not uncommon that happens. So at any rate, so you're there and you're trying to figure out how to get into Harvard. I think that's where we left off before I interrupted you. So please.
Yeah, and so as a child, I was I told you earlier, actually, John, how I decided to play the cello. It was really the influence of my mother. She's a flute teacher, as I mentioned, and she had flute students coming through the house all the time, and she would give flute recitals, and she loved chamber music. So she had her first daughter, my sister Zana, learn to play piano so that Zana could accompany the flute students. And then my mother needed a basso continuo player for all of those Baroque sonatas that flutists play. And so she said, "How about the cello?"
It's very practical, right? We're sort of gonna outfit the whole family band.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also happened that I liked the fact that the cello was big. I don't understand that, but when I was little, I thought that was great. Now I just think it's heavy.
Yeah, right. You don't have to buy 2 plane tickets for all of the different instruments, right? But you don't think about that when you're a kid, right? I didn't think about all the percussion stuff you'd have to lug around. I just thought drums were cool, and I was like, hey, I see people on TV playing drums, and they look cool, so I want to do that. So I understand. We never can quite figure out why we pick the instruments we do. So you're playing the cello, you're accompanying flutists and continual parts, and where'd you do your undergrad? Where'd you how did that all get started?
I decided I would like to try for the top, so I applied for several schools as an applicant to an undergrad program, and I got into all of them. I chose to go to Curtis, and at the same time, I had deferred my entrance to Yale. The reason for that.
Hold on, I just want to underline that for a second. So you chose to go to, now as a Juilliard grad, I have to be careful how I say this, but certainly one of the most competitive schools for music, and just as an aside, you went ahead and deferred your enrollment to Yale. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I just highlight that. Continue, please.
Yeah, I was a very driven kid, and I was playing literature in high school. That was probably a little bit too hard for me. Shostakovich Concerto and Jacques concerto. We probably should have been playing Haydn C major and, I don't know, Elgar maybe. But my teacher was so willing to do whatever I wanted. So I played those things, and in high school started to run into some tendonitis issues. So I said to my mother, well, I want to go to music school, but what if I can't play? And she said, well, why don't you apply to, some academic schools just in case? And I don't know why. I applied to Harvard and Yale. My
Just a couple of academic schools, just your backup academic schools, Harvard and Yale. I was never, I mean, it's funny that I teach at a university because I was never inclined academically in that way to achieve in that environment. So if folks that are listening, if I seem to be over exaggerating this, it's mostly for me because I'm just kind of like, I'm the drum guy. I'm just very cool. So anyway, so you're at Curtis in Philadelphia, Curtis Institute in Philly. Yeah.
Yeah, and Curtis was great. I loved every minute of it. It was so exciting, especially the chamber music. The orchestra was also wonderful with Otto Werner Müller, this very scary and brilliant German conductor. And we just met the most amazing people. I remember my first year, Yo-Yo Ma came and he gave a master class. It was so exciting. We also took a tour to France, south of France. We were at Lake Geneva, drinking Evian water from the tap, playing with Rostropovich. Oh my gosh, what an experience.
Extraordinary. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
But then my tendonitis came back, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what was causing it, but I decided I couldn't keep playing. So then I changed gears and enrolled at Yale. And that was also marvelous. And actually, looking back, I just feel so grateful for those 4 years at Yale, where I learned to really appreciate thinking and hard work and writing. And John, it was amazing being surrounded by all these really smart, driven people.
Oh, that's amazing. And both of us teach at universities, at state universities, and I think one of the things, especially now, certainly the world we're in now, when you and I were looking for schools, and we're roughly the same era of schools, that I remember envying that Avion tour that Curtis did because the other place didn't do that France tour when I was there. So at any rate, but it was sort of a theoretical discussion back then. It's like, well, maybe you should think about a university. Maybe you don't go to a conservatory. But now I think and I'm not saying this because I teach at a state university or because you teach at a state university, but God, it's so important to get that, to get that education and to have those experiences with other people that aren't musicians, and to engage with folks that are, have different interests than you and different experiences than you. And I mean, that was one thing at Juilliard that I liked, was that we had dance and theater, right? So there were some other artists there. But I really appreciate you saying the value of the experience you had at Yale and that academic environment, because I think students need to really think about that and really hear that very clearly. I know a lot of our alums and a lot of our future students will watch this, and I just want to underline another thing I want to underline. So now you're at Yale, making the rest of it.
Yeah, and I didn't really play that much at Yale, but I did study very hard, and I learned some really good. I learned a lot, and then I went to teach at a summer camp in Maine, and it was in those woods, those pine woods, and by those lakes, and hiking those mountains, I suppose, that I was finally able to heal. And this is a plug for summer music festivals. I want to show you my shirt that I'm wearing here. Yeah, summer music festivals are the best, and I really thrived in those places, and that was where I healed. I took a year off, John, between Yale and my next path, which was I went to study with Stephen Doan at Eastman for a master's. And that was the perfect school for me at that time, because Stephen Doan was very interested in how one should play, how one should direct one's body as a cellist. He didn't use those words particularly, which are more Alexander technique ideas, but it was the way for me to get back to really intense playing. And I'm I will always be grateful for those 2 years at Eastman with him. But I guess in the back of my mind, I had always thought about living in New York City, and I had met some people at the Bowdoin Music Festival where I had been previous summer, and they were students at Juilliard, and I thought, well, maybe I should just keep on going. Maybe I should get a job as a college professor, and then I can play chamber music and teach, and as we were talking about, be in this wonderful academic environment. Like, just be a student forever, except be a teacher.
Except have an office, right? Hopefully, right? Theoretically, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I decided to go do a doctoral degree at Juilliard. That was also a great program. I mean, what a gift. That degree is free, and so if you can afford an apartment in New York City, find a way to pay for it. I did that by teaching a lot. Then you have so many opportunities to learn too.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say that when I went to Juilliard, I expected the academics to be rather easy, and that I would really just focus on cello, and I was wrong. I spent a lot of time in that library.
Lime green carpet, right? What was it? Is it lime green? I think I remember. I don't know if they kept the carpet when they renovated the place, but yeah, it's I've known some folks that have done their DMA there, and it is always a little surprising. As I've shared, and I should be careful. I want to say, as I'm kind of dumping on my alma mater, I loved it there. I had a really great time, had great teachers, and I learned a ton. So in no way do I regret any second of being there. It was fantastic. But yes, I think when you think academics, maybe other conservatories come to mind, like Eastman or Peabody, first before Juilliard. I think that's probably a good way to say it. So. So you've been at Fredonia now, and I'm curious, and this is something I didn't ask you the last time we chatted, but and I want to get back to music and your writing and the conference and things like that. But with your students, just tell me a little bit about how you deal with, I don't want to say teaching philosophy because it feels like an interview, but just sort of how you approach your students and the work that you do with them and what you're seeing young musicians coming to you now, whether again at Fredonia or when you're at SUNY, some of the challenges that they might be facing and what you're kind of trying to help them work through. I mean, it's a big open-ended question there about your teaching and kind of how you're engaging with that. Because I know for me, and then I'll be quiet, I promise. I've noticed in the, I guess, 10 or 11 years I've been at Mason, having students are less certain now that this is the right path. And there's more of a sense of wanting to be reaffirmed that it's going to be okay, that there's going to be, and this is before COVID, right? That it's going to be okay, and there's going to be a field to go into. I think there's music students always need that affirmation, but I have noticed that more now, and of wanting a little bit more direction than maybe I wanted or needed, or that you wanted or needed as a student. So just share a little bit about how and how you're working with them on that, and then also like how you're teaching during COVID. So those are the two big areas I'll toss out to you.
Okay, well, first of all, at Fredonia, we are teaching face-to-face. I was a little nervous about that this summer. I didn't think that was a good idea, but it's working out beautifully. We had 0 cases the last time I checked, which is amazing. How exciting. And I have never seen my studio so driven. This fall, they're just on that stage all the time. They're ready for their lessons. They're working so hard. And I think it had to do with the experience that, where they had to go home early last spring, and this summer was so strange. So I think, they realized time is of the essence. As far as studio mentality overall, I remember thinking when I first got the job that I really wanted to make a family for them. Um, I think students get homesick when they leave home for the first time. They don't know how to do their own laundry. They don't know that they need 8 hours of sleep. And I think they also kind of miss all those home ties. They miss their parents, they miss their old friends. And so it can be a very lonely time. And I thought that to make it better for them, rather than having a competitive studio, which I saw a lot through the years in my different schools that I went to, I wanted to make sure that they felt like their colleagues were their best friends who they could rely on, and remind them too that later down the road, those would be the people they would turn to for advice, for students, for, I don't know, music, even work. And so I have made that a really important center of my studio, and I see the cello studio as one of the closest studios at Fredonia. But then the other thing that I think is really helpful to think about right now is that all great artists are grounded by this COVID thing. And so what do you do when you're grounded? Well, you put all of your attention on what can you control? Um, so that's why this summer I thought, I've got to make this CD. But for my students, it means learning. It means actually really working hard and practicing. And okay, maybe you can have a performance here and there, but mostly you're going to be in the incubator working on improving your knowledge.
That's such a great point, and I've had this discussion with with colleagues at Mason, with colleagues at SUNY, everywhere, and it's so easy. And I think all of us reacted initially in March and maybe April to just the overwhelming sense of like what the heck's going on, and how our whole, I mean, my whole calendar was canceled, and obviously all the way through the summer, and I'm not complaining at all. I mean, I'm very lucky, but I know what you say about being grounded. I mean, we all were in that place, and once you sort of pull out of the initial shock of all of it, it is sort of like well, I don't want to compare it to something else because everyone's experience was different, but we you do have to keep learning, and you do have to use this time. And there were so many things with Swanee that I thought, man, we could really, and Hillary and I and Rhea and the team there that run the place, we were like, what can we do right now with this time that we never have ever had before? We're always like trying to run a festival and always having people, conductors and concerts, and that's what we want to do, and that's obviously what we're incredibly excited to get back to doing. But it did give us time to kind of bring the ship into dock and look at some things that we were doing and fix some things. And I would give all that time back to have had a program this summer. But I think everybody needs to take, and I think that's what you're saying, is that to take advantage of, um, if you have the privilege to take advantage of this time, then you should. Whether that's taking a class online or taking some lessons, or studying something completely different that'll inform music in a different way for you. Um, whatever that happens to be, and I've been encouraged to see my students do that, and I'm glad to hear that in what you're talking about. So. In addition to all, so speaking of things that you've done, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your writing and the work, that the paper presentation that you're going to do. And I have to tell you, I'm going to make fun of you a little bit, Natasha. You're the only person I know that submits a paper for proposal in a festival in Italy and then can't go to Italy for the festival because of COVID. So my heart does break for you because it would have been an amazing chance for you to go to Italy and present. But and really sort of take this time to not just talk about the paper, but kind of the larger work behind that. And I'll share the screen in a second for what you're doing. So yeah.
Um, so I was awarded a sabbatical last spring. There are such wonderful gifts from the university. It's just an amazing opportunity to do something that you're interested in and get paid for it. So this sabbatical, I wanted to learn about women composers. And I realized, looking back over my life at all those great schools I went to, and also orchestras that I've played with, chamber music that I've played, I didn't ever really play anything by a woman. And I remember thinking about it as a student and just assuming that women were not born to compose. Perhaps women couldn't compose. But then I realized, I know women composers. I know Marty Epstein. She was a friend of my mother's and a friend of mine growing up. She just won a Guggenheim. She's a Boston area composer. And then I met Dalit Warshaw when I was a student at Juilliard. We were both in the same doctoral program there. She also just won a Guggenheim. And my friend Carrie Maloney lives just down the road a few blocks. Wonderful composer who's written a lot of music for me. I love her music. What's going on? Why am I not playing music by women? Why are there no women on any of these programs anywhere that I look at? So I decided it was time to learn about this repertoire, and I'm just a cellist teaching at a university, but I thought, well, I could at least program works by women, and then also teach those works to my cellists. And then in some small way affect the audience's awareness and just help to teach people about the great works that they don't know. I feel like it's buried treasure. So the conference that you just showed on the screen, that came across my inbox as an opportunity for any academic. You could send an abstract, which is a one-page document about a paper that you might like to present. And this is the conference, Women Are Not Born to Compose. And it's about, that's a saying taken from Clara Schumann, I believe. And so this conference will look at female composers from those two dates, 1750 to 1950. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, I want to go to that conference, even if I don't even have anything to say. I wanted to go there so I can learn something. And then as I thought about it, I thought, well, maybe I could write a paper on these pieces that I'm learning. My partner and I, duo partner Eliran Avni, and he's a pianist, we have been playing concerts which we've been calling Women's Voices. And on the program are works by composers such as English woman Ethel Smythe and the French composer Louise Farrenc and living composer Ellen Taff-Zwillik and Lara Auerbach. We also started learning songs by Alma Mahler, which I play on the cello, and a few other things besides. And anyway, I thought, well, let me write a paper about these composers and maybe a few others. And I came up with a topic and submitted it, and then it was accepted. So now I have to actually polish that paper. But I wanted to say
that's always the trick, right? When it's like the best part of anything is the announcement, right? We're doing this new program. I wrote this paper. Or we got into this conference, and then you go, oh my goodness, I actually have to, I have to drill down on the work. I want before you continue. It can feel, I would imagine, well, I won't imagine, I know, because I am involved in programming and performing all the time myself, that, sometimes you could step back and say, gee, what difference am I really making? Can I really do this? How am I going to, single-handedly lift this piece or these composers out of, whatever the obscurity is and put them into a bit bigger thing? And I think in classical music, there's sort of this mythology of the one conductor that took the one composer out of obscurity and made them famous, right? And there's sort of the Bernstein-Mahler thing, and that's there's a lot of truth to that. But there's other folks that talk about the Bach cello sonatas and one person that brought all of those out. But I think the truth is more that it's about a whole bunch of pressure, right? It's about a whole bunch of people leaning into pieces and finding repertoire and doing it and having the conversation about, well, do I really need to play this? I don't want to pick on a dead white guy, but do I need to play this piece? Or is there a similarly wonderful piece written by someone else that, if for no other reason, I'm lifting this voice up? So I would encourage anyone that's watching this to you will have a difference, right? You can make a difference. You can have an impact, and there's no, I have a student right now. She's putting her master's recital together, and she's programmed all works by African American Black composers or female composers. And I think she looked at me kind of sheepishly and said, "Is this okay?" And I said, "I mean, of course it's okay. Like, I mean, of course this is exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Not only is it okay, it's like really great. And there's music I didn't know. I mean, she found, some piano works that she's transcribing and snare drum solos and all this really neat stuff. And so I don't know what impact her recital is going to have, except that I know it's going to have an impact. And if it's just on our students, great, because then they'll all go out and do stuff, and then they'll do it with their students, and it'll continue on. So I don't mean to filibuster here, but I'm so I think this is so important, and I want to make sure we give it the time it deserves. That writing this paper and doing these recording projects and doing this work that you're doing will have a broader impact probably than we even really know or realize at the time. So thank you for doing it, and it's really important and it's really impressive. So now you just have to pick a conference somewhere else in a beautiful part of the world after COVID, and submit the paper again to another really wonderful place. Great. So I kind of, I hope I didn't interrupt you there, but you're polishing the paper. Tell us when the presentation is. When are you actually doing that work?
The conference in Italy, in Lucca, Italy, will be at the end of November. So a 4-day conference, and it will be, unfortunately, as you said, virtual. But held in European time. So starting at 3 a.m. And running into the later afternoon. But the nice thing is those conference organizers were very kind to give us few Americans some of the later times. So I'll be at 3 p.m. Sunday, which is 9 a.m. my time. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing the other people and what they have to say, especially the really famous musicologists. I expect to learn a lot. I still feel like I'm kind of a newbie in this field of music, women composers.
Well, there's certainly great repertoire to be explored and performed, and I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad others are doing it. I'm glad that we're leaning into this. So we have your recording projects, with the CD that's out, you have the paper in Italy, and all of this great work. Before we go, I want you just to take a second and tell us about your duo partner and the work you're doing there, and to the degree that you can, because I know the project is still unfolding, but a little bit about the Concerto Commission, and then we'll wrap up. But let's hear about that.
Yeah, sure. And as I'm talking, you can share the screen, the link to the Ekstasis Duo website. I've been playing with Eliran Avni in what we're calling the Ekstasis Duo for a few years. We've been performing a lot, mostly our women's program, but we also performed in Merkin Hall last January of a program of French music, which did include some music from that CD that I produced recently. And then this summer, we managed to put together our recording. We weren't sure if we would be able to get to the recording booth, actually, because all of our plans were for April and May. And of course, New York was on pause during that period. But we did finally get a chance to record in August. And what did we record? The same music that I mentioned earlier, music by Ethel Smythe, Louise Varenk, also some song transcriptions that Nina Simone sang. In fact, you can play a little bit of it here if you like. Oh, perhaps that didn't work. Anyway, so we had 3 days of recording, and that CD will come out after we finish our editing process, and we're calling that CD also Women's Voices. And our plan, also going down the road a bit, is to have a video, a sort of multimedia project performance where we will play live, but have a screen overhead to help enlighten the audience about these composers, because many people have never heard of Louis Farrenc and
any of them,
yeah.
really. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely an issue. That's good. I wanted to make sure I had the audio shared correctly, so the quality was good. So let me go back now and play some of this recording. Yeah. And for more, they could visit the website that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen, and go to your personal site, and we'll make sure all of that is linked in there. So this is really great, Natasha. I'm so glad we could um, chat again. It's never, I never, these days it's always good to be able to talk to somebody anytime you can, right? Before we wrap up here, I just, any other quick thoughts about, you know, your studio or your teaching or playing, or really anything for students? You know, a lot of our supporters and patrons in Sewanee will check this out as well. So any other quick information you want to share with our folks?
Yeah, actually, I did want to say that I'm extremely excited about the Winterfest in January 3rd through 8th. And one of the things that I'm really interested in promoting during that week is minority composers. And I think it would be really interesting and helpful for students if they had assignments given to them the month before to learn a solo piece by one of these composers. And I have a list. I've made a repertoire list during the research that I did during my sabbatical. And so for all the students who will apply, I will share that list. Even if they don't apply, I will share it with them. I'm very interested in having that spread around, disseminated. But then I think it would be really interesting for them to have that homework assignment of learning a piece according to whatever they're interested in, and then performing it for us. And of course, before that, getting a little lesson or two from us to help them prepare for their performance. But I think that will be really stimulating. And I have to say, John, I had no expectation during the preparations for the sabbatical and also all the concerts before giving this Women's Voices program. I didn't know that the music world would explode like this, is so eager for minority composers. It's like, oh my gosh, it's all around me now. It's so exciting.
Overdue, but and there's definitely ways to look at it, like, well, it's about time and it's long overdue, but it's also, I think we have to look at it. We have to look at it in a way that's positive and inspirational, right? Like better, you know, I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad that we're in this place. And you know, I found myself doing a tremendous amount of listening, both to people and to music this summer. I'm still doing it, but you know, certainly in the summer. And that was part of the reason for this winter program, was to be able to offer some different things. And over the next couple days and weeks, we'll be announcing more of our faculty. We'll be seeing more of who's going to be joining us, and I think you'll see in that roster um, a representation of some really wonderful artists and folks that are going to help us take this journey, which is going to be really exciting. So, well, Natasha, I'm grateful to you for your time. I'm grateful to you for your time twice. So hopefully we got the audio right this time, and there won't be too much echo. Um, but in all seriousness, it's really great to talk to you and to hear about the work you're doing. And for me, with Sewanee, the thing that is most inspiring for me is being able to work with faculty like you and our colleagues there, and to also be able to kind of make it a place that people want to come back to and want to be a part of. So I'm so grateful to you, and I hope that you have a wonderful presentation in November. I'm excited for the commissioning project that we're going to be rolling out here soon with your duo, and we're thrilled to be a part of that. And thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much, John. Thank you.